Because I was meeting with some former gang members in Phoenix, in Los Angeles, and Albuquerque, New Mexico. And when I talked to those former gang members, here's what they told me, why they joined the gang. They said, well, joining a gang is like joining a family. I said, joining a family? Yes, because the gang offered support, it offered leadership, it offered comfort. It was a way to get ahead. Where have we come if joining a gang is like being a member of the family? And
reasons I think it is that more and more people are becoming aware of the fact that there is a problem, and I think that there are some groups that have started to come about in the city. Some citizen groups have come up, and I think that there's been an increased awareness from the school systems. There's been some community meetings. There's been some organizations that have formed to help look at some alternatives for some of these people and some ways to solve some of the root causes of some of these problems. So in that respect, I guess the problem's gotten better. As far as the law enforcement end of it, we haven't seen an increase or a decrease in the activities that we generally attribute to these things. Historically, though, as the weather becomes colder, these problems decrease because a lot of this activity takes place at night, takes place outside, and as the weather becomes colder, a lot of these things just move inside, and so historically the numbers of these incidents would decrease over the winter months.
There has been an increase in gang affiliation. The amount of gang activity is still relatively small, but we've seen a new gang emerge in Muscatine. I think for years we had one that was called Latin Kings that had been in Muscatine for many years. And over the course of the last year and a half, we've had another group called GDs that have merged together with a blend of a variety of different types of kids. And so we've seen an increase of the number of students belonging to the so-called gangs in the community.
You can spank your kids, you can't beat your kids. I've been there. Spanking is one thing, beating is another. But the question I have is, how can we fight gang members when we have gang members on our police force that go drive around the squad cars and flash gang signs?
Don't go away. Don't go away. Yeah, you forgot to answer the question. Who? You know all this stuff. Who? Come on. Who?
All right, everybody, shut up here for a minute. No, hold on. Hold on a second. Where are you at? Where's the lady over here? Oh, there you go, ma'am. I'm going to tell you right here, in front of everybody, that you better come out with the proof that I am a gang member. I heard this so many times, and I do not deserve this from you or anybody in this place, because believe me, I don't do this job as a police officer. I don't go into the schools to teach, to take this abuse from you or anybody.
I'm not giving you abuse.
No, hold a second. It is abuse.
I saw you twice, ma'am.
Prove it, ma'am.
My eyes. Isn't that proof enough?
No, it's not. Prove it. Because there's my boss. It's a
I wish I'd had a camera, believe me to God. I wish I had a camera.
I'm going to tell you that until you can prove it, I would suggest you keep your mouth shut.
Why? Freedom of speech.
Because it's a lie, that's why.
No, it's not a lie.
Okay.
And police officers also said you belong to the gang, Latin King.
Name the other police officers that say that, ma'am.
I don't know who the police officer was that said it.
Let me tell you something. When I don't know the facts, I keep my mouth shut until I know the facts.
I saw you do it. And
Prove
Pearlie is another one that did it.
Yes.
And I saw him do it.
And I've heard this comments from other people in the community.
There's so many people that it must be true, correct?
No, it is not true. Tell you what, I can probably earn my money sweeping floors or being a policeman, but I love my job. I'm not going to let you or anybody talk like that about me or any of the police officers unless you have proof.
I wish I'd
Thank you very much.
The allegation that was made at the meeting was totally false, was certainly uncalled for, and I think that there's no proof whatsoever to substantiate the fact that that officer or any officer is involved in any gang activity, and I think that was ludicrous on that person's part.
There's been some unfortunate categorization by people of the groups by race. That's unfortunate. I think the people that have a good understanding of young people in the community realize that this is not necessarily a racial or ethnic problem. It's a young problem with a relatively small few number of kids in the community. I don't want to perceive it as simply a racial or ethnic problem. We've got in this building 30 to 40 kids involved in 2 groups. That's out of 1,700 kids. Most of our students of all race and ethnic groups are doing very well at Muscatine High School. We've got some small number of kids looking for an identity. Our goal is to find alternatives to that.
Tonight are the Latin Kings and the Gangster Disciples. In Muscatine, these are the 2 predominant groups that we have problems with. There's no beating around the bush about it. There are other people that get together, they have cliques, groups that hang together, white kids, Spanish kids, black kids. Doesn't mean they're all in a gang, but the gangs we're talking about, Latin Kings and Gangster Disciples. To give you some delineation as far as what they are, they're street gangs. They're not from Muscatine. This is not where these gangs originate from. About 5 years ago, we had a group in Muscatine that went by Los Vados Locos, homegrown gang, mostly Hispanic kids. And that's not putting down the Hispanics as a group. This is a specific group with a specific problem. They were assimilated into the Latin Kings. In time, we had another group develop, which were the Gangster Disciples. The difference between the groups, if you read books about it and you talk to people who are experienced in it, there are left side and right side gangs. Left side gangs are the Latin Kings, Vice Lords, gangs that fall within that group. As far as the right side, we have the Gangster Disciples, Black Gangster Disciples, Satan's Disciples, and numerous other groups. There's where your delineation is. And you want to know as far as how to identify a group, how to identify individuals within the group, that's where you start. They're either a left side group or they're a right side group, period. There's no in between. Now, as far as Latin Kings, you want to say, how do I identify one? Colors is where you really start. Gold and black. These are symbolic colors for that group. You'll see kids with shoelaces in their sneakers. They'll have them intertwined, black and gold. They'll have a black one on one side, gold on the other side. They'll have jumpsuits on. They'll have articles of clothing which will fit in this color frame. Now, one single thing is not going to make a gang member. Just because a kid wears black and gold doesn't make him a gang member. It's one identifier. There are a number of other identifiers that you use, and you use them as a totality of the circumstances. You look at everything. Now, we've had it mentioned as far as Dr. Paul mentioned, as far as school books. Kid brings his school books home, he has graffiti on them. Well, kids do that. Every kid does that. Identifiers. What you'll see as far as the Latin Kings, and we see this as far as the graffiti in town, is a 5-pointed or 3-pointed crown. That's a signifier. A 5-pointed star, not a 6-pointed, but a 5-pointed star. Many times see graffiti and they'll have 5 dots along the top. Same symbolic meaning. As far as a lot of other things that you're going to see, the spray painting itself is going to be in the symbolic colors. Many times you'll see either black and gold graffiti or simply gold graffiti. You want to skip over to the Gangster Disciples? Now we're looking at something different. Very similar, but now they have a 6-pointed star rather than a 5-pointed star. Symbolic to them. I hate to skip back and forth, but I'm trying to give you a correlation between the two. Sometimes it looks very similar. I've talked to people as far as the graffiti, and they say, well, this is Latin Kings graffiti, or this is Gangster Disciple graffiti. I know it. My kid told me. Well, you're wrong. Many times they look very similar. It takes a lot of experience and reading graffiti to make that decision, which is it's going to be. Sometimes you'll see gang member names in the mix with the graffiti itself, and that way we can tell who's been putting it up. Can we always prosecute them for it? No, we can't. It's like anything else. We need evidence. The evidence, aside from the graffiti being there, is a witness, somebody seeing them put it up. We ourselves seeing them put it up. Catching a kid standing right next to it with a can of gold spray paint, or black or blue, whatever it might be. Well, that's some type of hard evidence. The names themselves, they don't get you an arrest, they don't get you prosecution.
Folders and stuff like that.
We have asked faculty members and administrators to be aware of gang symbols and signs, clothing in the classrooms. And if that does occur, we'll involve parents in the conversations. We've taken away some of the graffiti that's on notebooks with students and encourage that not to be done.
Well, it's our belief and in the information that we have would indicate that the people that belong to these gangs, generally speaking, are in an age group of between 14 and 16 years old. There are different gangs that encompass different ethnic groups, but there are gang members from all ethnic groups. And although some gangs are, in fact, ethnic specific as to their membership, in other words, you need to be of that ethnic background, whether it's Hispanic, white, Asian, black, to belong to the gang. There are other gangs, the Gangster Disciples as an example, where that's not necessarily a prerequisite, and that encompasses whites and blacks and others. And so I think it encompasses all ethnic backgrounds and races, and I don't think it's a problem that's specific to any one race or any one background.
Our understanding is that it's spread out among the middle school and high school grades. It's not any certain grade. There's also non-students, kids that have dropped out or graduated, that are members of these groups that are creating some problems for the community.
Has there been any like disciplinary changes since the gang activity the attention is given to it?
I think the major changes for the school district has been that we've involved the police much earlier in the process when we've had confrontations between kids or problems. This year we are going to have students arrested or escorted from the building if we feel there's a serious problem. We just can't continue to tolerate any disruption of the daily school activity. So that type of consequences increased. We've also increased the amount of parent involvement. We are bringing more parents in to understand we have a feeling that their son or daughter may be associated with a particular group.
Do the parents usually believe you, or do they just,
We don't make an attempt to make the parents believe us. We simply tell them our general impressions, and then they have to deal with the information. And I think some are beginning to believe now. Initially, very few parents felt their kids were associated with gangs. It was always the neighbor kids and not theirs.
I just think we need better communication with everybody. And another thing that always seems to keep coming to my mind, I know that that lady had a problem, and Irma's had problems. Everybody's had problems with the gangs, but there's still that question. Why did we start having the problem? Why are they here? You know, I know if a butcher comes to town, he comes because he wants to sell meat. You know, if he can't sell meat anymore, he leaves. You know, so I think, hey, if we can find out why the gang even came here and stop the reason they even came here, hey, maybe they'll leave. You know, if they can't get what they want out of Muscatine. Maybe we just got to find out what they want in Muscatine and let them know that, hey, they're in the wrong town to get it, you know?
All of you can help. The Multicultural Center is a good thing. We need to support it. I'm not pointing at any colors or anything like that, but everybody has to help, and it has to be the complete community to start. And I'm not going to sound like Dan Quayle, but it does start in the home with family values.
Why do you think you reached out for the gang itself, Isabel? Were your parents there? Was your mother, father around? What happened?
They were around, but it's not, when you're young, it's not easy to talk to somebody older. It's harder for you to talk to your mother or father about what's really going on.
So you didn't talk to them
So
at all?
you couldn't really sit down and talk to your parents. You wanted to, but you couldn't. So you would go out and find a homeboy or homegirl.
And how about you, Delta? What made you do it?
I
I wasn't able to talk with my grandparents. That's who I live with. I believe because of the generation gap that's between us, age-wise.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that the town meeting was a success in educating the public about the gangs and their activities?
Well, having had about a month to think about it, I think that on one hand it was a success only because it got so many people together in one place in order to exchange information about what we, the police department, feel as well as what other people felt was a problem that's affecting the city. So I think that's really good. I think, though, in hearing some opinions afterwards, some people really didn't take the meeting for what it was intended to be. And some of the things that might help to clarify that is that one lady called and she told me that she thought it was simply appalling that I made a statement that this isn't a police problem. Well, that's not at all what I said. What I said was that this wasn't only a police problem, this was a community problem. So I think that for the most part the meeting was a success. In fact, we're planning additional meetings in the hopes that we can continue the momentum that we feel has started from the first meeting and to keep people interested. What happens with things like this historically, sort of like neighborhood watch programs, they'll start up. People who are involved will be very enthusiastic and go out and do all the things that they should do to have a good neighborhood watch. But then if there's no momentum, if there's nobody driving it, what happens is eventually it sort of slows down and stops. It's our hope that we can, either through having more meetings or some of these splinter groups that have popped up, that we can continue the momentum. We'd like people not to forget about this and just be something that's important today but not important next year. We'd like people who have started to look into it to continue to look into it, to perhaps develop some alternatives and some solutions to some of these problems, so that eventually this problem, although I don't think it would ever go away, will at least become or decrease to a point where it's manageable and not so intrusive into other people's lives.
On campus.
We've had very little vandalism in campus. We've had some minor graffiti, but compared to other schools, we have very little vandalism. Muscatine High School's had a history of very little vandalism, and so far we have not seen a major change in that over the years. We hope to keep that type of activity off of campus.
I think that any solution is going to have to come from several different places. I think that you definitely need the police. I think you need the schools. I think you need the rest of the city government, city and county government, I should say. I think that you need just the average citizens, and I think you need business. I think that you need to get all these people together and see what it is that causes these problems. The crime or the illegal activity that we deal with isn't really the problem. That's sort of the result of the problem. That's the end of it. What we need to do is to go back and say, what caused the problem? A lot of the cases that we see are really no more complicated than having young people with no direction and no supervision. And so that when it's 1 or 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, these folks are out roaming the streets at night instead of being home where it is they should be, especially at such a young age. And so the real problem isn't that person's broken curfew, or, I mean, it's a problem for the police, but that's not really the problem. The problem is, why did that person break curfew? How did they get allowed to be out at that time of the night? And that's just an example of some of the other issues where the first step is to identify the problem, and then what it is to identify what it is that you can do to solve the problem. Some of it, I think, is education. A lot of it's education. I think some of it's parental responsibility. People have to make sure that they're aware of who their kids are, where they go, and what they do when they go there. And I'm not thinking that or saying that people should watch their kids like hawks and not allow people to have any expansion in room, because they should do that. But I think it's really helpful if at least you know who your kids' friends are, kind of activities that they like to do, what they're involved in, whether it's sports or school or whatever it is. But I think people need to spend a little bit more time with their kids, and because of a lot of things, and I guess not the least of which is families where both people have to work now because of the economy. It's very difficult sometimes to get some time and sit down and just know what your kid's doing. And I think that's important. So I think parenting is a really high on the list of things to be considered. But I think it's a joint effort. It's got to be done with the whole community.
Never stops. This city never stops.